Captain Cassidy Rourke, an experienced medevac pilot and daughter of a legendary general, disobeys orders and flies over the dangerous Granite Pass to save a man on the verge of death. Her risky maneuver reveals a connection to her father's secretive past, arouses the interest of the security services, and attracts the attention of unknown players from the shadowy aviation world. When she finds traces of surveillance and old ghost flight protocols, Cassidy finds herself at the center of a conspiracy that revives a past that should never have returned. Welcome to my channel. They always called it Granite Pass like it was some rustic postcard spot you'd hike on a long weekend. But to me, it was a battleground. Not for bullets or bombs, but for seconds. Lives. The kind of flying where every breath felt borrowed from the earth below. I'm Cassidy Rourke, 36, medevac pilot, and, for reasons I stopped trying to explain a long time ago, the only child of Brigadier General Thomas Rourke, the man who turned the 307th Skyguard into legends. Folks say he could thread a Blackhawk through a canyon with his eyes closed and both hands tied. I believe them. I've seen the tapes. These days, I fly a retrofitted UH-1 in Huey we call Hazel, named after my grandma, who used to tell me stories about angels with dirty hands. She'd have loved this bird. Hazel's paint is sun-bleached, her engine temperamental, but her bones are good. She's old enough to have flown in the Gulf, which means every inch of her creaks with stories. My stories. My dad's. Maybe even yours. That morning, we got the call at 0704. A climber had fallen on the west face of Widow's Crown, one of the nastiest drop zones in the Sawtooth Range outside Helena, Montana. A private expedition, no support. All we had was a pinned GPS beacon and a 4-minute window before vitals went critical. We didn't think. We lifted. I had Kendra in the back, sharp, no-nonsense trauma tech, and Luis riding co-pilot, fresh from Colorado Guard. It was supposed to be a straight run, until the warning came in. Restricted airspace alert. Route Bravo Delta is under military lockdown. Immediate reroute required. I looked at the map. The safe reroute. Added 22 minutes. The fast one, straight through the jaws of Granite Pass. Luis, how are you with flying sideways? I asked. He blinked. You mean, laterally banking through a canyon narrower than our blades? In a bird older than me? Exactly. He gave me a nervous half-grin. Better than crashing. We pressed on. The moment we crossed into the pass, Hazel groaned like she knew what we were doing. The rotors clawed at thin mountain air, and winds ripped through the canyon like wild dogs. Below us, jagged rocks jutted from the earth like broken teeth. It was flying by feel, not sight. And then the radio crackled. Unidentified rotary aircraft. This is Norcom Air Control. You are in violation of restricted airspace. Land immediately or be intercepted. Luis looked at me. What now? I didn't answer. I gritted my teeth and pushed Hazel harder. Kendra shouted from the back. Cass. He's crashing. BP's bottoming out. I didn't need more. I knew what my father would have done. What he taught me. You don't wait for permission when a life is on the line. You fly, and you deal with the sky on its terms. I banked Hazel hard into a curve so tight it felt like the mountain flinched. The rotor wash kicked up sheets of dust and pine needles, and for a heartbeat, everything went silent. Just the thrum of the blades, the hum of adrenaline in my veins, and the ghost of my father whispering in my ears like he always did when the sky got mean. The radio chirped again, louder this time. Unauthorized aircraft, this is Falcon 1 of Norcom enforcement. Land immediately, or you will be forced to comply. Luis leaned into the mic. Falcon 1. This is medevac Victor, Echo 6. We've got a critical casualty aboard. Requesting emergency corridor clearance through Granite Pass. ETA to Trauma Bay is 12 minutes. There was a pause. Then a voice as sharp as a rifle crack. Negative, Victor, Echo 6. Clearance denied. You are operating without proper authorization. Stand down, or we will engage protocol. I didn't need to look at Luis to know what he was thinking. Engage protocol meant intercept. And in this stretch of restricted airspace, intercept meant being nudged or slammed out of the sky. And they could do it. Hazel may have been gutsy, but she wasn't built for evasive maneuvers against falcons. Fast movers. New birds. And unlike us, they weren't carrying someone's last shot at survival. I toggled the comms to mute and said, Luis, strap in. I'm going full cane maneuver. He blinked. You mean that thing from your dad's legend? It's not a legend if it still works. I nosed Hazel down and to the right, skimming the canyon edge so close we knocked loose snow from the granite. The move was madness, banking into a narrow crosswind while descending at an angle steep enough to trigger stall warnings, but it bought us 2 precious seconds out of radar lock. Cass, his breathing just dropped again. Kendra shouted, "We've got 10 minutes or less." I toggled comms back on. Falcon 1, be advised. We're proceeding with emergency protocol. Medical priority Alpha. Repeat, Alpha. Another pause. Then a new voice, calm and measured. Older. Victor, Echo, 6. This is Colonel Mercer of Norcom. Identify your pilot. I swallowed. My heart thudded once hard. This is Captain Cassidy Rourke, pilot in command. The channel went dead for a full second. Then, one breath, 2. Stand by. A moment later, everything changed. Victor, Echo 6, Mercer said quietly, you are cleared to continue. All Norcom interceptors will hold position. Repeat, hold. Luis looked at me, stunned. What just happened? I didn't answer. But deep inside, I knew. It was the name. Rourke. That name still echoed in classified corners of the Air Force. Still open locked doors. And still scared the hell out of anyone who knew what my father had once done in a place not listed on any map. Outside, I saw them, 3 dark specks at high altitude, circling, watching, but not moving in. Hazel powered forward like she'd grown wings. And we flew. I leveled Hazel out just past Devil's Elbow, a jagged twist in the canyon where currents bounced like pinballs. Below us, the river churned dark and icy. I'd flown this pass twice before. Both times on training exercises. Both times with my father's voice echoing in my headset, warning me, Granite doesn't forgive. Fly it like it's your last. It might be today. Luis was checking readings, flipping switches faster than I could follow. I caught his voice through the headset. Altitude holding. RPM steady. You keep flying like that, they'll put your picture in a manual. I didn't laugh. I couldn't. My hands were locked on the cyclic, my arms aching from the strain. Every nerve in my body tuned to Hazel's rhythm, the shudder in her tail rotor, the subtle pitch shift when the crosswind shifted behind us. In the back, Kendra had gone quiet. Not a good sign. Kendra? Status? I called out. She sounded tight. Focused. Pulses thready. Oxygen saturation's dropping. Cass, if we're not on the pad in 6, I don't think he makes it. That was the thing about medevac flying. You could be the best stick in the service, but sometimes the clock still beat you. Not today. Luis scanned the scope again. Cass. Talk to me. We're being flanked. High altitude. Looks like Norcom isn't letting us go entirely. I glanced up through the canopy. Sure enough, 2 Falcons still hovered at high mark, keeping watch. Not close enough to interfere, but close enough to remind us they were still in control. Then the radio lit again. Victor, Echo 6, this is Falcon Lead. You are clear through Granite. We've been ordered to provide perimeter escort. Effective immediately. Luis mouthed a silent what? I keyed in. Copy that, Falcon Lead. Orders from whom? A different voice cut in, one I hadn't heard in years. Low. Calm. Dusty like an old photo in an ammo crate. From me, it said. Hello, Cassidy. My hands froze on the stick. Colonel Mercer? He chuckled. Still flying dirty, just like your old man. Good to hear your voice again, kid. I'd known Mercer when I was a cadet. He'd been my father's old wing commander, the man who taught me how to land on moving targets and how to recognize wind shear by smell. I hadn't seen him since my dad's funeral. You're running Norcom Air now? Temporarily. And only because I saw the Rourke name on the flight manifest. Thought I owed you a favor. Another pause. His voice softened. Cassidy, that maneuver you pulled in the gorge, Kane's turn? Yes, sir. You ever think you might be flying more than his bird? Maybe you're carrying the whole damn torch. I didn't know what to say to that. So I said nothing. But deep down, I felt something click into place. Like a compass needle finding north again. Hazel thrummed steady beneath me, proud and loud. And we flew like ghosts. By the time we hit the final descent vector, Granite Pass had begun to narrow again, walls rising steep as knife blades, shadows thick enough to hide entire airframes. But I knew this stretch like old scars. The turns were muscle memory, etched into my bones from days flying alongside Dad through VR training sims that replicated every gust, every downdraft, every coffin corner. Luis leaned in. We've got 5 clicks to Mercy Air Hospital. Winds are shifting north-northeast, 18 knots. Copy. You take controls for 30 seconds. I need eyes, I said, flipping my visor back. Outside, I scanned the ridgeline. Something had been tugging at me. Not the weather, not Hazel, but instinct, an itch at the base of my spine. Then I saw it, a shadow that moved when it shouldn't have. High above, between two rock spires, hovered a sleek, unmarked tilt rotor. Not Norcom. Not civilian. No transponder. Luis, I said low, you see our third wheel? Yeah. No ping. But they're definitely watching. I toggled the secondary channel. Falcon lead. This is Victor, Echo 6. Confirm presence of unknown aircraft at 11 o'clock high. A moment passed. Victor, Echo 6, stand by. Then Mercer came back, voice clipped. That's not one of ours. They've been sniffing our corridors for weeks now. We don't know who they are. But they always disappear before we can make contact. Private contractor? I asked. Maybe. Or something worse. The way he said it made the inside of my skull prickle. Either way, Mercer continued, you're not just flying through history, Cassidy. You're flying through someone else's op. Luis looked at me. You want to peel off? Go safe. I shook my head. We've got 2 minutes to landing. We're already ghosts. Let's finish the mission. Ahead, the canyon began to widen, revealing the rooftop helipad of Mercy Air, bright orange with the white medical cross gleaming like a target in the haze. Kendra's voice cracked through the headset. Cass, we're down to seconds. If you've got a landing left in you, now's the time. I didn't answer. I just nosed Hazel into final approach. We came in hot, too hot for most birds, but Hazel held. Her skids touched concrete with a hiss of dust and steel, a landing so smooth I swear I felt my dad's ghost give me a nod. The trauma team swarmed in. Doors opened. The patient was lifted out, limp but still breathing. Mission complete. But something about the sky still felt unsettled. And in the distance, that unknown tilt rotor dipped its nose and vanished behind the peaks. After Hazel's engine finally wind down, I sat in the cockpit longer than I needed to, just me, the weight of silence, and the rattle of 1,000 thoughts. The med team had the climber in surgery within 60 seconds. Kendra peeled off to assist, her gloves already red at the fingertips. Luis just sat with his helmet in his lap, staring out at the horizon like it owed him an explanation. Then Mercer's voice came back on the headset, a private channel I hadn't even realized he'd patched in. Cass, I need you to stay put. Norcom Intel wants a word. I sighed, popped my door, and stepped out into the thin, sharp air of high Montana. The cold hit like honesty. 30 minutes later, we were ushered into a debrief tent on the edge of the helipad, a canvas cube filled with laptops, murmuring analysts, and one very tall man in a dark suit who didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. Guys like that don't have names. They have clearances. You violated restricted airspace, he started, not even bothering with a hello. I shrugged. And saved a life. If that's the issue, I'll take it up with command. He stared at me flatly. You didn't just fly through Granite Pass. You resurrected a maneuver last seen in a classified Skyguard op from 96. Kane's turn. Now I got nervous. Because that op? It wasn't just classified. It was buried. You didn't learn that in a flight school, he said. No, I admit it. I learned it from the guy who wrote the manual before the manual existed. You mean Brigadier General Rourke? I didn't reply. He closed a folder, my folder, then leaned forward. There's chatter picking up around Granite. And not just local. Someone's probing old corridors. Testing reflexes. And the way you flew today, he paused. You're one of maybe 4 people who could have pulled that off and lived. I crossed my arms. So what are you saying? That flying like my father's a crime now? No, he said slowly. I'm saying we need people who can fly like that. Who remember what flying used to mean before satellites did the thinking for us. He slid a card across the table. No name. Just a frequency. If you see the tilt rotor again, he said, call us first. Then he stood. Just like that. Gone. Luis looked at me. What the hell just happened? I didn't know. But I had a feeling Granite Pass had more ghosts in it than even I realized. And some of them were waking up. I didn't sleep that night, not because of adrenaline or fear. It was something else, heavier. The kind of weight you feel when a chapter's closed, but the book keeps writing itself without your permission. Luis and Kendra bunked at the Mercy flight quarters. I stayed out by Hazel, half wrapped in an old wool blanket, watching the winds slide over the mountains like whispers. The kind of stillness that makes you think the world's trying to tell you something if you just breathe quiet enough to hear it. Around 2 a.m., the whine of distant rotors cut through the dark. Low. Fast. I scanned the sky and caught just a flash of light, red, blinking once, then gone. No spotlight. No sound beyond the beat of its blades. It wasn't Norcom. They'd gone silent after the debrief. It was them. Whoever they were. They didn't land. Just circled once, high and wide, and vanished over Widow's Crown like ghosts tracing an old patrol route. I didn't call the number on that card. Not yet. Instead, I walked up to Hazel, ran my hand along her weather-beaten fuselage, and whispered the same thing my dad used to say after every op. "You still got one more in you, girl?" She didn't answer. But she didn't have to. The next morning, I pulled the maintenance panels and found something that didn't belong, tucked between the junction block and the tail servo assembly. A beacon. Low frequency. Passive. Painted the same matte gray as military avionics, but it didn't match anything on Hazel's schematics. I yanked it loose and held it up to the light. No marking. Just a tiny switch on the back. Kendra walked up behind me. "What's that?" "Something that rode with us through Granite." "You think Norcom planted it?" I shook my head. "No. They'd never leave something this crude. This is old school." Luis walked up, squinting. "You think they were tagging you? Or testing you?" "I don't think this was about me at all," I said slowly. "I think they were watching the bird. Seeing how she handled. What routes she flew. What systems still worked under pressure." "You mean Hazel?" I nodded. "Hazel's old, analog, and immune to most jamming. Same as a dozen birds Dad used to run back in the ghost days." Luis swore. "You think they're trying to revive phantom flight protocols?" "I think they already have. And maybe, just maybe, I'd flown right into their hands." By mid-morning, the skies over Mercy Air were back to their usual rhythm. Life flight choppers buzzing in and out, supply birds hauling gear, and the faint drone of jets at 30,000 feet, where the war never touched the ground. But something about the air felt different, like it was holding its breath. I spent the morning dissecting that tracking beacon. Its circuitry was primitive, by modern standards, anyway, but purpose-built. Military solder. Short-range transmission only, which meant whoever planted it wasn't interested in long-term surveillance. They wanted to see how Hazel moved, how I flew her, and I had a pretty good idea who. Around noon, Mercer called. Not a message. A direct line. "You found it, didn't you?" he said. No introduction. "I did." "Then we need to talk." "Not on a line. In person." He gave me a location, an old, decommissioned Norcom relay station outside Helena, up near where the old logging roads turned to gravel. The kind of place that never shows up on GPS. I packed a gear bag, left Luis a note, and lifted Hazel one more time. Her rotors chopping through clean mountain air like she'd been waiting for it. We weren't fast. We weren't stealthy. But we were unmistakably flying on purpose. When I touched down near the relay shack, Mercer was already waiting. Dressed in civvies, arms crossed, silver hair whipping in the wind. He didn't waste time. "You were shadowed," he said as I shut down the bird. "The tilt rotor you saw? We've tracked it on Black Channel radar 3 times this month. Always near old phantom corridors. Always observing." I climbed out. "You think it's foreign?" He shook his head. "Worse. I think it's familiar. Built from our own discarded parts. Old code, old tactics. Legacy hardware operated by someone who knows how we used to fly. Ghost teams. Not sanctioned ones. Whoever this is, they're reassembling Phantom-era tactics, but from the outside. Rogue. Private. And they're using old birds to test new missions." My stomach sank. "So why track me?" "Because you're the closest thing to living Phantom protocol we've got left. You, Hazel, and what your father built." He walked me inside the relay station. Dusty consoles, long-dead servers, but one panel still humming. "This was once the uplink for Phantom operations in the Sawtooth Corridor," Mercer explained. "Your dad helped design half these paths. His call sign still shows up in buried logs." He handed me a printout. On it, Raven 2. Pilot, Rourke, T. Confirmed path, Echo Niner. Then, beneath it, Raven 3. Pilot, Rourke, C. I stared. That can't be right. I've never flown under that call sign. Mercer nodded grimly. "You did. 3 days ago. The system tagged your approach path as Phantom Standard. Automatically assigned you the call sign your father requested be reserved for you." I had no words. Only questions. And one blazing certainty. I was in this now, whether I wanted to be or not. The relay station was quiet, save for the soft buzz of ancient monitors, and the occasional clunk of a fan kicking onto cool machinery that had outlived its creators. Mercer sat beside me, tapping through old flight logs that hadn't seen daylight since Y2K was still a headline. You said they're using phantom tactics, I said. But who is they? Contractors? Private military. Mercer rubbed a hand over his jaw. Worse. Splintered cells. Ex-operatives who've gone off-grid. We had a name for them once, Black Echo. Guys too smart to discharge, too dangerous to keep. I leaned back, absorbing it. And they're flying my father's air corridors. Not just flying, Mercer said. They're replicating. Using retrofitted birds like Hazel, analog systems immune to EMP, ECM, and modern surveillance. But they need data. And you just gave them the most valuable test run they've had in a decade. I looked down at the flight printout in my lap. Raven 3. My father's ghost, echoing through the system like a signature carved in the clouds. Why assign me his call sign? I asked. Because you flew like him. Identical trajectory, same canyon timing, same altitude drift tolerances, within a 4% margin. I shook my head. I didn't know. I just felt it. That's the point, Mercer said, standing. You felt it. That's what they're trying to steal back. Instinct. Legacy. You didn't fly the corridor. You remembered it. I stood too, the old wood floor creaking beneath my boots. So what do they want? To prove that the sky still belongs to the shadows, he said. To show that legacy flight, untraceable, unpredictable, is more powerful than all the drones and satellites we've grown reliant on. We stepped outside. Hazel sat there on the gravel pad, her rotor blades still, her nose facing east like she knew where this was heading. They left a mark on your bird, didn't they? Mercer asked. I nodded. Beacon was planted in my tail housing, painted to match her skin. He took a deep breath, then reached into his coat and handed me a patch. Black. Bare. Just a silver outline of a raven in mid-dive. The last flight I ran with your dad, he said if anything ever happened, and the world forgot what flying used to mean, this would bring it back. I stared at the patch. The same one that had sat stitched on his own flight vest during classified missions I was never supposed to know about. What is it? I asked. A calling card, Mercer said. And maybe a warning. I turned it over in my hands. For the first time in years, I felt the sky lean in close, like it was listening. And it was waiting for my answer. That night, I stitched the raven patch onto Hazel's cockpit side panel, right next to the faded decal of the 307 Skyguard. Not as a statement. Not even for pride. Just to remind myself of who I was, and maybe who I was becoming. Mercer didn't ask questions when I requested a solo flight clearance. He just handed me a frequency and said, if something doesn't look right, call it. We'll be listening. I lifted off at dusk. Hazel's engine purred low and slow, her tail steady in the chill. I didn't fly toward the base. I flew west, back into the pass, back into the cut and curve of rock and wind where instinct had no manuals to lean on. Where history hummed beneath every eddy of air. And just as the sun dipped behind the last ridge, I saw it again. The tilt rotor. Hovering in the shadows just north of Widow's Crown. No lights. No transponder. Just there. Waiting. This time, I didn't turn away. I throttled up and moved toward them, staying just inside canyon draft. Not hostile, not aggressive, just present. Hazel's old tail beacon blinked to life automatically. And then, so did theirs. A faint pulse. Identical rhythm. 2 long, 1 short. Raven code. But this wasn't military standard. This was field work. The kind of pattern you'd only recognize if you'd flown with ghosts before. I keyed up the private Norcom channel. This is Raven 3. Visual confirmation on tilt rotor. Marking pattern Echo Sierra 5. Confirming approach. Static. Then a voice I didn't know, but somehow recognized. Female. Calm. Sharp. Raven 3. You're late. I blinked. Do I know you? No, she replied. But your father did. The tilt rotor dipped its nose in acknowledgement. And then it turned. Flying low, fast, and silent. I followed. For 15 minutes, we skimmed the rock line, curling west through an uncharted vector Dad once marked in grease pencil on an old topo map he kept in a locked drawer. They were showing me something. A message written in altitude, in rhythm, in memory. And then, without a word, the tilt rotor veered south and disappeared over the spine of Mount Sable. Gone. I circled once, then twice. Nothing. When I touched down back at the Mercy pad, the med crew was long gone. Luis met me at the edge of the helipad with a coffee in one hand and a file folder in the other. Mercer's people found something, he said. Stashed at an abandoned airfield near Bozeman. Storage crate hidden under a retired Blackhawk hangar. He handed me the folder. Inside, a map, a flight manual with Dad's handwriting in the margins, and a note. It read, Cass, if you're reading this, it means the sky still remembers. Fly smart. Trust the old ways. And don't wait for clearance. Some corridors are yours now. The edges were worn, but the ink held strong. Just like his voice in my memory. I didn't sleep that night. Not from fear. Not from adrenaline. It was something deeper. A hum in my chest like rotor blades turning before the engine starts. A sense that everything had shifted, even if the world around me hadn't noticed yet. The next morning, Norcom requested I speak at a joint pilot training seminar, Legacy Maneuver Applications in Modern Emergencies. Sounds fancy, right? But I knew what it was. They wanted me to explain the impossible. To explain instinct. To teach ghosts how to fly. So there I stood, in front of a room full of bright-eyed young pilots. Some were civilian medevac, some Black Ops rotor jockeys, a few wearing the dark uniforms of silent units we don't acknowledge on paper. They'd all seen the footage by now. The dive through Granite. The bank through Devil's Elbow. The tilt rotor escort. They didn't ask about tactics. They asked about feel. I pointed to a still frame projected behind me, Hazel threading the corridor, the canyon walls a blur. Flying isn't just calculations and checklists, I said. It's memory. It's rhythm. And sometimes, it's rebellion. A young lieutenant raised her hand. Ma'am, how do we know when to trust that kind of instinct? You don't, I said. Not at first. But when the math fails, when the skies get loud, and when someone's life is ticking away in the back of your bird, you'll find yourself reaching for something deeper than training. I paused, then added, that's when you remember the voices that taught you how to fly before you ever sat in a cockpit. When the seminar ended, one of the command instructors approached me. You ever think about teaching full-time? I smiled. No, but I'll fly by when it matters. That night, I took Hazel back into the pass, not for a mission, not for a rescue. Just for the feel of it. No escorts. No tilt rotors. Just wind, shadow, and sky. As I cleared the summit ridge and watched the last of the sun bleed out across the peaks, I touched the raven patch on the panel beside me. Dad, I said aloud, they're starting to understand. Hazel dipped gently as if she agreed. Below us, the canyons were quiet. But I knew better. They were listening. And somewhere beyond the horizon, someone else, some legacy, some rookie, some rebel, was waiting to make their own run. Because legends don't live in monuments. They live in the hands of those who keep flying forward. One corridor at a time.